Being that it is 7 o'clock, I will call the meeting to order. I will wait to make a motion to approve the minutes and just let a few more people get logged in. I think we may have another potential addition to the commission. There's a gentleman who reached out to me who I think may be a good fit for potentially Mohammed's team, but if you see an unfamiliar face, that's probably Kenneth. Yeah, so welcome, and I guess get the administrative items out of the way. I'll make a motion to approve the March 4th meeting minutes. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. Seconded by Mr. Underwood. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The motion passes. The minutes are approved. Thank you, everybody. Do we have anybody from the public who would like to speak to the commission this evening? We don't have any. I did not read. It looks like Ken is out there. Can we bring him in if possible?
Sure.
Yeah. And I did not receive any comments from anyone from the public, so we'll move on to our next item, which, I'm sorry, go ahead, Stephanie.
I'll say there's Ken Cannell when he's ready. And
Hi, Ken.
wants to talk.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to our executive committee. This is our 6th meeting. We meet every month, and just for everyone's information, Ken reached out expressing some interest in being contributing to our development of our climate action plan, and based on his background, it seemed like he might be a pretty good fit for Mohammed's team. But I did want to give Ken the opportunity to just introduce himself, and yeah, floor is yours.
Sure, thanks. I'm Ken Slaisman. I retired full-time last year after teaching for 23 years at York College of Pennsylvania. I am an economist, so I teach economics. I am very interested in sustainability. I teach a course in environmental economics, and I still teach there as an adjunct. Years and years and years ago, I taught at Dickinson College for 4 years. And I also spent 9 years in state government at the time it was the Department of Commerce, doing economic development policy work. My retirement is kind of a semi-retirement. I'm basically downsized. Instead of doing 4 classes every semester, I now do just 2. So I'm looking to get more involved in my community. Now, I don't live in Carlisle, I live in Mount Holly, but climate stuff transcends political boundaries. I see my community from a climate perspective as the planet, for that matter. I would love to be involved in some way, shape, or form, and whatever I can do to be helpful. I would love to be able to do that.
Yeah, thanks, Kay. We have a soft spot for environmental economists on this committee. One of our team leads, Tony Underwood, is such a economist, and he leads our Pathways and Analytics team.
Perfect.
Okay, Ken, thanks for being here. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Hi, Tony. Nice to meet you too.
I will say, just based on the information that I heard and kind of where I think possibly a really good fit for you would be, is actually really good timing, because we're starting our point. We're coming up on about the halfway point of our commission, where we've approved a strategy, what we call a pathway, and we're going to take a subset of those actions that could meet our targets and, for lack of a better term, do a deep dive or a cost benefit analysis that's informed not just by economics, but by social values, by contingency evaluation, whatever those methods that you're familiar with that also are informative to make a good assessment of and resulting in a recommendation that is actionable potentially for council. So we're at the point where we're trying to get squared away of what those specific actions that we want to do the deep dive on. I will talk more about that, but it sounds like Mohammed, as he starts to kind of get working on those 4 or 5 projects that your expertise would really be helpful. And in this case, you wouldn't be behind at all, because that team hasn't really started yet with their efforts, sort of by design, but they're really ready to get going. So at this point, just sit back and enjoy the meeting. And if you have any questions, certainly chime in or chat. And so with that, yeah, thanks, Ken, for joining us this evening. I want to kind of start out just to highlight the fact on Wednesday, some of you were able to make our meeting. I guess that's our 3rd meeting with the city of Carlisle. So we met with staff, some of the staff and officials of the city of Carlisle, who, as most of you know, are working on their own climate action plan. And the meeting was focused on hearing their strategy, sort of the equivalent of our pathway. Still, I will post the slides that they had when I received them, but they had 5 sort of overall objectives, and I'm paraphrasing a bit on them, but they sort of broke down their approach to their first objective was municipal operations. So they sort of kind of just broke off the whole public sector thing into its own category, which is not uncommon to do. So there'll be things like our public buildings, our public transport fleet, vehicle, that sort of stuff. They had another objective dedicated completely to transportation, echoing a theme here. And then the rest, they had one that was to reduce overall energy consumption, energy efficiency. And they broke that actually separate from, they actually broke out consumption from energy efficiency. So they want to focus on reducing overall consumption separately from actually sort of things like weatherization and highly efficient, HVAC systems and appliances. So I actually broke those into 2 different categories, and their last objective was waste management. And again, I'll post that for everyone to see once we get them. But it was very clear that their plan was very demand side centric, and that kind of reflects the fact that their energy supply is centrally managed, and they have very limited control over the carbon intensity of their supply. So for instance, their residents don't get to choose their electricity or their natural gas supplier. It's a very nationally controlled system. So that their plan reflects that sort of orientation. Now we're going to present our approved pathway. Hopefully April 21st is still good for Tony's team. Keep a lookout for calendar invite from Karen Lockhart. She's sort of our Joyce Stone equivalent. So we're still looking at the 21st to do that. And some other things we talked about, we confirmed that we'd also like to continue to collaborate on Earth Day events, and Sarah can talk more about that. I think we at least confirmed who the main points of contact on each side, and they were a bit apologetic because this is a very common week or 2 weeks to have uh, uh, vacation, and so some of their folks were not able to be on the call, but they affirmed that they're looking forward to working on this. So I guess that's Earth Day is April 20th, the day before we're going to meet with them. So I look forward to that. I think that'll be a really nice thing we can share in our community, highlighting some of the efforts we're doing to highlight Earth Day. And then lastly, we agreed that the next meeting would be a good opportunity to stand up our first subgroup. We had proposed in our first meeting back in November four potential subgroups: community engagement, energy decarbonization, energy efficiency, and energy decarbonization, community outreach, energy efficiency, and transportation as the subgroups. And so I think the first one that we're going to try to actually stand up is the community engagement sub-team. And I encourage Sarah and her team to think about what objectives you want to propose when we discuss that on the 21st. I think that's the second big thing we'll try to accomplish at our next meeting. So what's interesting, they have a convention, their interaction with the community, they use this tool called a citizens jury to help them prioritize and deliberate potential courses of action. A citizens jury is a convention used, globally in different, it's a way for small groups of randomly selected citizens that are representative of the demographics in an area to come together to reach a collective decision or recommendation on a policy issue through informed deliberation. So effectively, we're attempting to achieve the same type of feedback and interaction using our surveys and our newly deployed Engage tool on our borough webpage. But I think learning about how they're using the citizens jury and the pros and cons will actually be really interesting and informative to us. It could be a potential tool that we can think about using. And I think this is just one of many areas the subgroup can share information and lessons learned. They are very excited to, one of the things, Carla, you might be particularly interested is doing is basically creating from whole cloth a brand new housing community they call Garden Village. Coincidentally, it's designed to house about 20,000 people. So it's basically a mini Carlisle they're going to grow from scratch. And they talked about some ideas about how they can build in local agriculture and really effectively use economies of scale to really more economically design a community that is pedestrian friendly, that is encourages sustainable practices. And I'm really excited to hear how they're going forward on that project. So they obviously, as they said, despite the fact it's cold and rainy there a lot, they expect people to move there. I mean, they have the blessing to expand, affordable. This is affordable housing. These are not Cotswold, cottages. These are designed to be sort of categorized mostly affordable housing but they're doing it from the ground up. And I was. We got to hear about 10 minutes of that project from their planning and policy team lead, who works for the economic development lead, Jane Meek. Jane also has responsibility for actually executing their climate action plan. So she's sort of been the lead on their side. So they're excited to share that information. It was really interesting to hear what they were doing. So look for a calendar invite for the 21st, and we'll keep moving forward on that. So the next item on the agenda, probably before I turn it over to the team leads, we'll probably spend a little bit of time talking about this, but I sort of wanted to resolve the work of what the intergroup teams work and the mission of the pathways and the projects and estimates team based on our team lead meeting we had last week. So I think there was a little bit of confusion, but I think after thinking about this and talking with Mohammed a bit and some others, I think we confirmed the best utilization of Mohammed's team was really to focus them on 4 to 5 high impact actions that could come from any of the sectors that we're doing, and task them to look at alternatives for accomplishing them, okay, while working closely with the other teams. So for instance, if we determine that one of the high impact actions, which coincidentally is our transportation 1 objective, is the promotion of and promote adoption of electric vehicles by households and businesses to achieve 30% of the light duty fleet by 2035 and 90% by 2050. If we decided that was going to be a high impact action, his team would develop several alternatives to achieve that while interacting with the other groups through the inter-team group mechanism, okay? So the result would then, from his team, be a cost-benefit analysis that reflected the economic and social costs and benefits, and then make a recommendation that would be part of the report, but it would be a recommendation that the council could review. So that would leave it to another team, and I would propose potentially to Tony's team, to kind of fill in the rest. So that would leave it to another to do a much lower level assessment of the remaining viable actions. So we could kind of go through your actions, decide maybe there are some we're not, it's not even worth assessing. You might think of a few more to add. I think you probably will think of a few more maybe to add on. And then you would take more of a conventional ICLEI approach. So I'll just share my screen here. So it'd be kind of like, let me see here. And this will be very familiar to Tony, but it would be sort of looking at the level of, you know, taking an action and doing a very general sort of assessment of the co-benefits, and you know, some of the supporting programs that would support those items. So Tony is very familiar with this sort of traditional ICLEI assessment, and so I think the items that the projects and estimate team did not tackle, what I call the high impact actions, leave it to your team to sort of do the traditional ICLEI assessment on those actions. So I think, you know, once we agreed on the 4 or 5 high impact actions, and I would like that to be a next order of business and really kind of resolve that, we would send those over the projects and estimates team, and they'll dig into those, and then we'll map those to one of those 3 teams. So we'll keep the team names. I think all of those actions fit very nicely in one of those 3 teams. And so, you know, to kind of get the ball rolling a bit, let me show you a different, you know, I had kind of submitted one of the, you know, sort of my list of, is that it? I'm sorry, that's not it. Yeah, here we go. Sort of my high impact list. Now these are all coming from Tony. These are all part of, you know, one of the potential actions that they modeled. You know, the model that Tony's team did meant that there were certain measures that if we met would actually cause those reductions. So I took them directly from, different sectors. The T is transportation, the R's are residential, and C's are commercial. M is municipal operations. So the ones I had highlighted here would be, at least my thoughts of 4 high impact actions that we would turn over to the projects and estimates team. But I would like to, if it's people are prepared to, I'm certainly willing to discuss this more. The activities I sent to the team leads on an email, but they're also on our Microsoft Teams page. Any thoughts about this? I can throw it back up if we need to. These are just, again, these are nothing more than my thoughts about good candidates for the projects and estimates team, but I can throw it back up if we need to. But any discussion about concerns that we may be overlooking a useful objective that might be worthy of the deep dive that Mohammed's team is going to do?
I do have one, and you'll have to excuse me. I have to pull up an email from one of my team members, Hans Pfister.
Yeah.
But just give me 1 second.
Sure.
He's been, and I think he's probably also sent you a few emails on this. And I don't know, this might actually be a good project for one of those teams just to work on, and not necessarily something for the cost benefit analysis itself. But the community choice aggregation, or the CCA.
Yeah, I've read those. Those are really good. Yeah. I would be very comfortable in allowing some smaller groups or some smaller activities that would be interested in working on a very specific project and developing some ideas and including that in the report. I absolutely, and I think that's something we can manage in the inter-team groups. But a lot of what Hans' ideas go directly to the energy decarbonization effort, right? I mean, it's all about, he's highlighting some efforts that mostly large cities are taking to make it easier, if you will, for their residents to opt in to low carbon electricity plants, right? I think that's basically the idea with what Hans is trying to do. As you know, one of our big barriers, and that's one I kind of harp on a bit, is we don't have a renewable default option. I know Barbara is tired of hearing me talk about that, but I actually think PPL thought it was a good enough idea to put it in their docket last time, and for various reasons, it somewhat understandable. It was not really endorsed by the independent generators, the wholesalers. But I think what Hans is looking at doing is really reducing the barriers, right? The information time, the cost of time to manage your generator, that they've seen some cities overcome that. And I think it's a great project, and I'd be very open to getting groups to work outside of the PET on specific project like that. So I'm very open to that. So I don't want to close the door on that in any way. Yeah.
If there's time, I just have one more, and again, similar thing. I don't know if this is the exact time to be mentioning this, but I did speak with a business owner earlier this week in regards to Earth Day, and she shared an idea of trying to reduce truck traffic, or maybe also moving more closely to a ban of truck traffic through town. But it did lead me to wonder, though, it does strike me that that could be difficult, obviously. But also there are a lot of different co-benefits that could be gained by trying to either work with trucking companies and warehouses to find other routes around Carlisle. And I'm sure these are conversations that have been had, but I wonder if there is a way for us to kind of renew those conversations, because it does, and this is kind of preliminary, but it does seem like there's a lot of community support.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of co-benefits there.
I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, I don't know how many of you know, Lewisburg recently worked with PennDOT on a program to basically prohibit type 6 trucks from going in their downtown, which are state roads. So it's very similar to like High in Hanover. They were seeing some negative effects of the trucks coming through, problems with air pollution, noise, and it took some time, but PennDOT actually had a program where they try to work with communities that feel like they're affected negatively by trucking. And if you look at the you look at our spreadsheet, I actually already put that in the notes. Like, look at Lewisburg's, like, how could we? But I think what you're getting at, Sarah, is I don't want to imply or convey that anything we have the PET doing would prohibit our ability, at least to get more informed. We don't have enough time to make completely 100% informed recommendations on all these things. But what we can do is try to, maybe for lack of a better word, build a nice parking lot of ideas that we can keep, as a legacy and as part of the plan to encourage borough and staff to take up. I'm thinking, we're building resources, working with other colleges about, with their, Widener being an example. I won't get ahead of it, but I know there's discussion at Dickinson and Penn State Law to have another sort of practicum or experiential oriented things. So those are the things we can have them take up, right? And thing that we can really do is make sure they're teed up in a way that really helps get that effort started when we want to take it on. But that's the longest, I totally agree with you, answer. And I'm glad you brought that up. And by no means, if anyone ever thinks there's a really good idea that we're sublimating, let me know, because that's not my intent. We do need to prioritize the work of Mohammed's group, and I do want to focus on that for a bit. Lots of hands. Mohammed's I saw first. The floor is yours, sir.
Sure. So I just wanted to sort of seek the wisdom of the council here, because I think, so the point that Sarah just made about community choice aggregation, which is great. I mean, and then also the upcoming bills that are pending in the state house on community solar, which could be another sort of structure for self-directed purchasing of solar power. I mean, you actually build the panels and then sort of wheel it to yourself. What I'm trying to ask you, Joel, is that do we need a different word, different terminology for a project, which is something that we as a community organize? Perhaps it requires support and coordination, maybe even at some point budget support, if possible, from the community or from the borough itself, versus what is purely policy choices, which is to say that all you have to do for community choice aggregation is authorize it. You have to basically permit it, right? And there's some, like, basically the borough signs a contract with the utility sort of underwriting it, but it's basically a private directed project. Same thing with community solar. Is private parties building a private project for private consumption, but it needs to be permitted, of course. You need to have something on the books that allows for it. So you tell me if I'm seeing a distinction there that's not real, and if we need to start splitting interventions, which is we are going to, ban styrofoam, we're going to change the traffic laws, we're going to set aside, parts of, High Street for EV charging versus just unlocking something in policy, which after it's unlocked is entirely outside the domain of this council and really doesn't require any direct support, if that makes sense.
I think if I'm hearing you correctly, so I want to tread a little bit carefully about making too many assumptions about what we would anticipate council or staff to be able to do, which is one thing we can avoid by having these interteam groups. I am not a, I know we talked about how, you think there is sort of the bandwidth and capacity to have some very, very specific options for, whether, it could be, community solar or encouraging, rooftop solar on warehouses or energy efficiency projects. And I'm not opposed to working, sort of allowing that sort of high fidelity work to go ahead. I think that can be coordinated in their interteam groups. But I do think there are some, there's some activities that are very promising that may not require a lot of analysis by your teams and I think the example that Sarah brought, to pursue, like, how can we limit the number of trucks that are transiting our state roads, right? That roads that we don't own. I mean, I think those are things that we can probably work without, we can provide a lot of background information, knowing that it's going to take quite a bit of time to actually achieve that. I really would like to keep your team focused on looking at specific alternatives. If, for instance, if in achieving our EV infrastructure goals, to really maybe look at what zones would be the first to target and why, and what are the businesses that would be most supportive, what businesses would it support, who would be most benefited from those, how would we, as we start working with Sarah's team, as we learn that, hey, there is a big interest to have, EV infrastructure in our lower income areas. How can we focus some early development in those areas? I'm not sure I answered your questions, but I'm pretty sure that if we don't maybe necessarily resolve them here, that we can resolve them. But if you don't think, if you still want to talk about more clarity, let's keep it open. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I think you answered the question, Joel. I mean, I'm trying to develop like a vocabulary for us that makes it easier going forward. To me, projects is exactly what you described. It's not just what, but where and how big and how much and impact. And we're 100% on the same page. I'm saying that the other category.
Yeah.
What do we call stuff that's just like we just need to authorize it? We simply need to permit it.
Come up with a name. You got 25 minutes to come up with a name for it.
Awesome. We'll do.
I think, I mean, we do want, I do want to figure out the best way to capture it. And as Tony knows, you don't have to read too many of these climate action plans to realize that what we're trying to do here is a little bit more sophisticated than most of these plans. And that's not, it's not an indictment on those other plans. I'm trying to take advantage of the fact that we have nearly 40 people in our community who are willing to give a year of their time on this effort, and I'm gonna get the most benefit of that time. We have some really, really talented people, and if we can have a more detailed, actionable plan, I'm gonna put one together, and I think we can, and I want to do that. And I really think your team is doing sort of the most, maybe outside the norm activity that most climate action plans do, that really actually, what I would look to your team is to have really quite actionable things for council to consider when we approve the overall plan. Hopefully that makes some sense. Susan, I saw your hand a while ago. It's down. Maybe you've given up, but
no, I haven't given up. I'm a very patient person, Joel. But I did want to follow up on Sarah's remarks, because I think you're on point, Sarah, with respect to transportation and truck traffic in the downtown. We hear it often. And as many of you know, we collaborated with a number of key community stakeholders over a decade ago now. I think it was in 2010 timeframe, did the illustrious road diet that is either embraced by the community or still considered to be, what can I say, one of our mess ups, I guess. So I think it was extremely successful, having worked here from 2001 through 2012. We saw immediate change when the road diet occurred. A lot less truck traffic, reduction in speeds, people being able to cross the roads safely, the number of clipped doors and mirrors reduced significantly, and it just made a better experience if you were patronizing the downtown. However, it took a lot of work, a lot of outreach. I know Deputy Mayor Schultz was part of that. We had a lot of discussions with trucking companies. We actually had a trucking company that actually embraced the road diet, and I still have their letter in the file that they were for it. So I don't, I look at this as phase 2 now, and what can we do? So I think also what you'll find is with the subcommittee that's now been formed for transportation, you have a very well-versed borough staff member that will be attending those meetings, was part of the other project, and has a very good understanding of PennDOT rules and regulations. So I'm excited to see how that dialogue unfolds.
Thank you, Susan. Tony, yeah. You're on.
I was going to follow up similarly on what Sarah mentioned. Well, two things. So coming back to your initial question, Joel, of what other actions might be in this top 4 or 5 that I think would be worthwhile Mohammed's team doing a detailed dive of. I do think we should consider one kind of direct control municipal action there, where he could work pretty closely with the borough staff in putting together a fairly tangible cost benefit analysis. As I suggested several meetings ago, while emissions from municipal operations directly are a very small part of the overall carbon footprint, 4 or 5%, probably a little bit more when you consider some of the electricity use in some of the buildings, right? Maybe closer to 8%. But I think it could have a meaningful impact from a perception standpoint in the borough, that yes, we're trying to make these large scale, somewhat transformative changes in the borough over the upcoming decades, but here's what we're going to do right now. And I think that could be meaningful. That could be just some very near-term commitment on EV charging or ramping up LED lighting, where I think the costs and benefits would be fairly tangible. ROI could be fairly easy to calculate. And anyway, I think that could be a nice way. I don't know, Mohammed, if you would agree with this or not, but that might be a nice way of building out the spreadsheet of things you need to know for the projects that may be more difficult and less tangible that we want to be able to do that deeper dive on. So that was the one thought I had there, that we maybe want to have a municipal, kind of a direct municipal control action on that list, even though the impact from an emission standpoint may not rival the others' actions on the list.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I know Sean and Susan, there are two potential projects. I mean, we have some,
Right. And
we have some good folks, who really smart folks who I'm sure would love to have.
Well, I know
they can, because this is not their primary, necessarily their primary function is to sort of look at some new initiatives, and I like that idea.
so I don't know what action it is yet. You know, Owen Snyder did put together kind of a list of what the borough's already doing and some stuff that's been discussed in passing, and so we could return to that and try to come to a agreement on what should be on the list. So just quickly, I'll move on. I won't take over the time here, but the second thing was just on the point about trucks in the borough. I think the big thing, especially in the context of the federal, it's finally infrastructure week. We've been waiting for it for a long time. And, so in the discussion of the kind of federal infrastructure bill, I think PennDOT has already done several audits over the past several years in particular on the safety corridor on I-81 along the borough, all the way down to Shippensburg. And the biggest culprit for truck traffic in the Bureau is accidents on the interchanges, right? And so priority one there, I think, would be working both with the federal and state government and PennDOT to accelerate any plans for redoing some interchanges, especially Hanover, northbound Hanover, and up at exit 52. Anyway, that could be one of those actions in our plan that is stated in the somewhat more way that is typical in some of the other climate action plans.
Yeah.
Not as actionable. It says
Yeah.
actions literally are work with PennDOT on 81 interchanges and turnpike interchanges in an effort to reduce truck traffic in the borough, and that could be it. And we could lay it a little bit more.
I think that's a great example of a high impact activity that, quite frankly, doesn't require a lot of work by us. It's like we're either going to put the effort in, and the state and federal agencies are going to support us or not. There's not a lot of people. I think that's a great example of something I really want to make sure we highlight, but probably doesn't require a lot of our time. So yeah, that's a good example. Was that anything else, Tony, or Kevin? Okay. Sean, yeah.
Yeah, I prefaced this with a couple things. One, I don't think we know exactly what we're going to be able to do with the ARPA funds coming our way. And two, we'll probably have 9.6 million priorities to spend the $9.6 million. But I don't want us to sell ourselves short here, because there may be opportunities that we could fit those funds into projects here. So to the extent we can find something where the borough is a participant, and there are, perhaps there's grant funding we can create, or something, or create some program or initiative through those funds. I think we ought to explore that, because we're not going to have another opportunity like this. Hopefully, we don't have another opportunity like this. Unfortunately, the pandemic has provided us here, and we ought to take advantage of that and try to make real good use of it.
things, I know Mohammed and I talked about how a lot of the effort he's doing at, we want to put ourselves in the best position to be competitive for potential grants. And I think a lot of the work that Mohammed's team is willing to do sets us up to look like we've thought about this already when available funds start getting put out there. And that's exactly the motivation. I'll just say, and we don't need to talk anymore about it, but at some point, and I don't know what the best vehicle for doing that would be, but I would like to have some discussion among some of us about just some financing strategies, about how we would potentially look at using already our projected budgets to actually help us finance some of our projects. And I think there are ways we can do that, but also thinking about strategies about what, the thresholds we might think about in terms of matching grant costs and what we would think would be worth council's consideration and funding, those sorts of things. But I think that's a subgroup of us. I think it's worth having some ideas in our plan, but it kind of goes a little bit with what I think you're talking about, and it does deserve some more discussion. I mean, I think it goes without saying that we're there's not a lot of appetite in most places to really be too out in front in terms of using tax dollars to fund new projects that are maybe don't pay off quickly, and so we do need to be smart about how we're looking at where the funds are coming from. I would say on the energy efficiency end, there's a great opportunity for us to use cost savings set aside to fund other options, and I fully would be the first person to encourage us to approach our energy outlays in that sort of respect. In other words, not penalizing us for doing good work, using the gains that we have to fund other priorities that come from the cost savings. And I think we can actually do really well. Tony, I think there are a couple of municipal projects that I did not put on my list that maybe I would talk to a little bit more with Susan and Sean about. Two I'm thinking about are actually decarbonization projects that are very much in that area that are quite sophisticated projects, and like to get a better idea of how much help or assistance there might be on our end to move that forward, especially if I thought it would accelerate it. Yeah, I think those would be good candidate. These are in our utility areas, or we've got a couple utility related projects on energy generation that could be good candidates for what you're talking about. So those are all my remarks. It sounds like well, do the team leads would you like to allow yourself a few more potential actions before we confirm? And then, is that I see some heads nodding.
Yeah, I mean, when are you hoping to have kind of the inner team group set and moving? I mean, I know ASAP really, but
yeah. Well, that's your answer. Well, so we need the project. We need to know, Mohammed needs to know what his teams are going to developing alternatives and cost benefit for. I think those will be, Sarah, I think those will be sort of front and center of the things that we will want to focus our future surveys on, because Mohammed is really, 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 really going to want to know how the community feels about alternatives he's looking at to meeting those program objectives, right? So if there's something that you think is a high community impact thing that in your mind is somewhat that. I mean, I'll leave the 4 as the defaults and, adding 1 to that. But if you, I think we can do this informally on MS Teams, but within the next week, I would like the team leads to get happy with those 5 items.
Okay.
For clarification, sorry, so we're each choosing 5 items?
Well, let's just say I put out 5, and if you have a better candidate, and these are all coming from Tony's list, right? These are all coming from the Pathways list. If you have a better candidate that you would like Mohammed's team to explore, please raise it, and I think we can deliberate and resolve it via email over the next week.
Yeah. I was kind of hoping we could talk about some of the actions, just because some of them to me felt as though they could be, and I know it's like running a little late, but some of them felt to me as though they could be combined into 2, or combined into 1, or even 3 of the same actions could have been maybe combined into 1. And maybe we can have that conversation over email as well, or in a different meeting too.
That's a good point, Sarah. We talked, probably in many ways we talked around this too much on my team, right? Of trying to come at, that's why we ended up settling on the objectives, programs, and actions, kind of at 3 different levels, because we had a sense that there was going to be a sweet spot level of specificity that would make the work possible for the project. And we had some sort of targets for 2035 and 2050 in terms of emissions reductions, but in many cases, some of the actions that support those, some of the programs that support those actions are things that cannot be stated much more. I don't know if precisely is the right word. So, I mean, did you have a particular one in mind where you thought like we could collapse these 2?
Well, I was just thinking, some of these things, I guess one of the ones that came to mind was like, and this is an objective in and of itself, the tree planting and natural landscapes and reimagining the tree planting program for the borough. And basically the first, I would say like, 2 or 3 of those bullet points, I almost felt like that could just be like, okay, this is one action that we're working on if we decide that's like the way that we wanted to go. Or let me try to find a different example.
Let me
or the Complete Streets program was another one that I felt like that could kind of also fold into a lot of, maybe not a lot, but like a couple different aspects. And I guess I'm just kind of bringing it up now because I just kind of wonder if we were to kind of combine some of those actions in a way that I don't know if that would.
Yeah. So I mean, are you saying we would be better off sticking to the objective level for the things that we are passed off to the estimates team, like at the the object, like R4, tree planting, natural landscapes, direction, or do we need to be more specific?
It's hard to say, because not necessarily, because I think there's other instances, like for example, I'm really interested in gray water. Gray water is mentioned, like gray water collection systems, and I'm interested in that, but I don't know, like it would be really interesting to put that in a projects and estimate, or like in the cost benefit analysis. But I wonder, is that like, am I thinking that because I think that's interesting, or do I think that because
Well-
I think that's like a really viable option for us? So in some ways, I think, yeah, the objectives almost in and of themselves kind of work, but in other ways, there are other ones that I highlighted and I was like, well, I'm interested in this, and it would be cool to see the data on that. So I kind of entered this meeting thinking we were choosing still the 3 each. So I had kind of gone through, and there were some that I was prepared to be like, maybe we can make this one. That's what I was thinking on that, but Joel, I'll review the suggestions that you've given us and
Yeah,
write again.
yeah, I know a lot of the, so, you know, objective program actions are potential actions and then programs. That's the tier we're talking about. So objective, actions, programs, and I'm really asking us to resolve the action level. That's sort of the mid-level to throw over to Mohammed's team. And as you read, you know, the pathway report, you'll see, you know, the potential programs would vary greatly, right, in sophistication and effort across those. That doesn't mitigate the importance of any of them, but I do feel it's important to give the highest impact sort, you know, and that, you know, because it's going to require the most analysis, the most sort of you know, research for his team to do. You know, I think we have a lot of work to do in the borough for like, as much as I want to expand this to be more than a climate action commission, we really need to focus in the near term on mitigation as our, you know, most focal point. And I mean, there's so many benefits to looking at other sustainability options that, you know, I think we can do them justice, Sarah, and make sure they get the attention they deserve, but realize that we just have a lot of other work to do to make some of this get realized the way, you know, we would like. But yeah, that's sort of the best response. But I want to keep it. I have an open mind. If you know, I'm open to substituting a potential action that you think really is a high, you know, is a high priority item. But I think let's work on this week between the team leads to get happy with that. And I guess the other homework assignments from the team leads would, I'd like to have at least one person from each team who can serve on one of those teams. And I think, again, like I mentioned in our team lead meeting, I think the expectation you would expect to meet once a month, which isn't a lot of meetings before we have a plan so we need to get those stood up.
And Joel, just to clarify, I know initially you were thinking there wouldn't necessarily be a PAT member on each team. Do you want a PAT member on each team?
I think just because of the talent you have, yeah. I mean, if you know that's subject to people's obligations, and I don't know how often you're meeting anyway, but I would invite that. I think there might be some benefit as you're sort of looking at all the other actions and kind of assessing them in the traditional ICLEI manner. There might be some benefit in having a person working on the deep dive sort of issues. So yeah.
Okay, that's what I was going to share during my update, the kind of what we were planning to do on along those lines. So I can share that.
Okay. Well, let me turn it over. Sarah, the floor is yours for a community engagement team update.
Updates, yeah, there's a lot. This morning I met with the CAN group. That was really great to connect with CAN officially. We've also been working on Earth Day programming, as Joel has already mentioned. I had a meeting with Destination Carlisle earlier in the week to talk about some ideas for a scavenger hunt for Earth Day. We're thinking maybe a week-long program starting April 21st and then going to April 28th to coincide with the farmers market, which is also having an artisan market both of those weeks. So it feels like a good time to encourage people to be out and about in the community and encourage people to support local businesses. We'd like the list to be made up of ideally some paid things where you're spending a little bit of money here and there at local businesses, engaging or volunteering at local nonprofits, kind of just showing up to events. I know Earth Artisan Outfitters is playing an Earth Day event. So right now the goal is to try to coordinate and just to coordinate between all these groups, and yeah, we're working on that. But as far as on our team for CET, of course, and then she's also leading the Cumberland Valley Rising environmental group. They led Earth Day celebration last year. So we've been in close contact. We're meeting again tomorrow morning around 10:30 with our amazing CET intern, Claire, who's a senior at Dickinson. She's been totally awesome. She's helped us a lot in terms of our social media. We're now on Instagram, which is amazing, feeling very relevant these days. She's also, excuse me, started to outline some ideas for our sustainability award for a business, which I think is also probably going to be how we'll set up the other mini grants, what we're calling them right now. Basically what we're looking at, and we haven't formally decided exactly how we're going to break this down, but we're thinking about $3,000 prizes, or maybe a breakdown of like two $500 prizes, $600, $400, etc. But in three main categories: for a small business, for a nonprofit or NGO, specifically for a community initiative, and then a youth or a student project. Excuse me, sorry. I have like a tickle in my throat right now. I don't know. It's allergies or something. Those three projects or grants will likely be based on the same proposal which Claire is working on now. Claire's also been helping, of course, with the Earth Day programming, as I mentioned earlier. And we've also, I shared a document that is a position description for an intern for the summer, based slightly off of what Claire is doing right now. And also one of the ideal things they'll be working on is increased communication between the county and the borough, since we're both working on our climate action plans at the same time, to help share more information. One of my team members, Mitch, has been helping me to relook at the survey and find a way to make sure we're incorporating specifically the actions that that Mohammed's team will be conducting the cost benefit analysis on. So once we have a clearer idea of those actions, I think we should be ready to roll with that. I feel like I'm forgetting at least one major thing, but
Did you?
that's it for now.
You mentioned that you procured a bunch of LEDs. I don't know if you want. I mean, as part.
They have been ordered. They're on the way.
Okay. Yeah. So again, for most, I think most, Sarah's team secured a $7,500 grant from Dickinson's college and one of their centers, and yeah, it's putting that directly to use. Yeah, that thanks, Sarah.
Oh, I actually did think of one more thing. I'm so sorry. One of the other things that we'd like to look into, and Mohammed, I don't know how interested you are in being a part of this, but focus groups or stakeholder meetings of some variety with the community, meeting with groups of small business owners, meeting with groups of nonprofit leaders, you name it, environmental groups, trying to, similar to the idea, Joel, of what you were mentioning earlier with the citizen juries, but maybe not quite as randomized, but trying to hit different types of organizations and different segments of the community to make sure that we're getting input from everyone. So I think that would maybe be starting in May, but yeah,
Okay.
that's it.
Thank you, Sarah. Over to you, Tony. Yep.
Thank you. So, since we finalized the kind of the Pathways in Action summary report, I gave my team a bit of a break, honestly, because I pushed them pretty hard in the month of February. And so what we've been on a bit of a hiatus as we've kind of waited to determine how best we want to spend our time in fleshing out what we've been calling our kind of fact sheets on these different actions, and which ones we should be just trying to provide a good kind of descriptive summary of the potential role this action could take. Some of them we'll be able to model more completely in ClearPath, as you suggested earlier. And we just want to get a sense for which actions those are before we begin producing those, some of those projections. And so, we'll be, and as well as you also suggested earlier, looking in the potential co-benefits of these projects. So I can show you one, which is pretty rough still. It's kind of in the draft form that we've worked on it in. But this is, so Jeff Niemitz in particular on my team did a, well, why am I not seeing my, there it is. So put together, so this is pretty rough, right? But this is some of the kind of work we were doing in trying to get a sense for the potential efficacy of these different actions. So this is the one on solar warehouse roofing and some of the potential cost savings, emissions reductions, some of the hurdles that we may face in achieving these types of things. So Jeff did some good work in looking into kind of the typical load that warehouse roofs can handle. They weren't designed for solar panels, of course. One of the things we talked quite a bit about in this context is that when the county is negotiating new warehouse developments, that we can build into those negotiations the availability of this rooftop space or these retention pond spaces. So anyway, these are the types of things. We have several of these for some of the bigger actions. Some of it based on a little bit of modeling we did in ClearPath. Some others of them are more back of the napkin, kind of informed from what we learned, one from other climate action plans and some looking into literature from these particular industries. So we did a little bit of work in the residential energy efficiency and retrofitting, what the potential for energy savings is there, and what we could potentially expect for kind of best case scenarios in terms of uptake in the community. So we're kind of holding, given what we've done, that then once we kind of know what we want to allocate our time to, that's where we'll go.
Great. Yeah, don't hit delete on them. I mean, I did have warehouse solar installations as one of the deep dives for reasons that are not purely impactful, but I think that there's creating a model for how this would work early on, I think may be really beneficial. This would also probably require us collaborating on something with the county, maybe more so than any other. So you just happen to use an example of, I mean, that would be information we would very much want to use on Mohammed's team if we end up doing that. So I'd be interested, I'll get with you offline to kind of see what kind of library you're building and to figure out a way to make sure we don't lose that. Yeah, thanks. Any other updates, Tony?
No, that's it. We're meeting again next week. And we'll be back on our bi-weekly schedule then. And so we'll be ready to go. I'm kind of preparing some more of these fact sheets.
Yeah, okay. One of your members already contacted me to be on the energy Ken Schultes is going to be on the energy decarbonization team. But I think you knew that already.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can fill out the other two, I'm not opposed to team leads being on that, but I don't expect it either. Just if that's an option. Thanks, Tony. And then next, Carla Farrell. Hello.
Hello. Our team met on March 18th and looked at the action plan, the summary report. And we talked a little bit about that. It's a little overwhelming just to, look at the whole thing. I think we're going to have to break that into chunks for ourselves. And then there were some items, that we felt like maybe were a little bit too specific, or maybe we needed more information about why those things were chosen. Like, just for instance, the thing about the plant evergreens around the periphery of a park, but that might cause problems with the CPTED, the crime prevention through environmental design. So just maybe looking at that from a holistic standpoint. But these were just conversations that we had looking at it, but it all looked very exciting and cool. I guess our group is, kind of waiting to see what the priorities are going to be from the standpoint of what needs to be incorporated into the various ordinances. But looking at your action summary report now just kind of gives us some ideas about, what direction we might head, and hopefully get our ducks in a row for later on. We did also get a new member on our group, Elizabeth Grant from the Cumberland County Planning Commission. So she jumped right in and has some things to share with us too. So we're gonna move forward with that. I'm gonna have conversations with two of the people on my team about your cross groups. Joel, Jeff Bergson, who is a transportation engineer, would be nice maybe to have his insight on the transportation group. I just felt like I needed to get a little bit better handle on what it was that was going to be expected from him. So if he has any questions, I'll tell him to give you a call.
That's great. Yeah. Thanks, Cara. Sorry, we had trouble getting you on this week on the call, but hopefully we'll figure that out.
Yeah, that was odd, but
yeah.
I was actually just looking. They have a website for that that 10,000 house.
Oh, really?
Garden Village.
Garden Village, yeah.
Yeah, that's very very aggressive.
Yeah, it's a rare opportunity that a planner like you gets to build it from ground up. So
yeah, it's sort of like doing a master plan for the entire community. So it's kind of like the next step once you have a comp plan would be just to like do master plans for whole sections of the area. And it seems like that's kind of what they're doing, which is sort of cool.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you, Carla. And definitely not least Mohammed. I don't know if you have any updates that we haven't already talked about, but
well, I'll just share the rest of the group. And by the way, Carla, it reminds me of, I don't know if you know the history of Columbia, Maryland, but that when I think of like fully planned communities and ground up design, it's a mixed history, but it's a fascinating history. Sorry to nerd out there. So quick updates. So, I think as we've talked about in this meeting, we've started staffing up. We basically are planning now, to the way that Joel described it, to have almost like 5 parallel teams that are going to be working, maybe each one about 3 or 4 people on these high impact initiatives, rather than one big group. And so I would put everybody on notice now, to the extent that you have folks within your existing teams who may want to cross over and just work on one of these high impact initiatives because of their expertise, or they feel particularly invested, I think we would welcome that. We're actively but privately, because it's not supposed to be like a big public advertisement, actively seeking, you know, a few more folks for all these parallel teams. And then beyond that, I think, you know, we've been talking about the strategy, the sort of the initial, you know, outlining of what needs to be determined in order to conduct the cost benefit analysis. And we'll do that as soon as we have our five high impact projects. And then the last thing is just to point out for everybody's information, I happen to be part of a consortium within Penn State, which is collaborating with governments in Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, not Virginia, Maryland, and Maine on municipal policy, sustainable policies for municipalities, but specifically in the solar space. And it just happens to be a really cool source of comparative information. So I'm not saying we need to do much homework, because I think we're doing pretty well ahead of the pack. But if we're looking for anybody else to borrow from, that's a big one. And they've been sharing a lot of really cool information. And then I happen to be teaching a CLE for a bunch of lawyers in Cumberland County, and they were sharing with me quite a few examples of how they had structured previous municipal investments that were sort of non-traditional, that were not based upon standard infrastructure, but maybe were based upon some sort of cost reduction or risk mitigation or resiliency, and how they actually paper that, how you actually, you know, put it on paper and make it clear enough that you can perhaps go get it financed or at least budgeted. So that's been some helpful information gathering, and again, happy to share. But beyond that, I think it's just the calm before the storm for our team. So we're pretty excited.
Hey, Mohammed, would you mind putting some contact information for Ken to get a hold of you?
Oh yeah, I just emailed him. Yeah, but I will follow up with Ken. But thank you, Joel. Thank you for the reminder.
What took you so long?
I know, right? I know.
Thank you. And I just want to clarify something you said, Mohammed. So we're going to have the 5 impact, but those will actually get put in one of the 3 groups. We're not going to have 5 different groups. So we may have one group working 2. We may have one group working 1, but they will fit into one of those 3 groups. So
that's exactly right. Yeah, my point only being that however it shakes out, they'll all be working in parallel is what I meant to say. And that's exactly right.
Yeah. Very good. And I want to open up to all the other stakeholders here. The floor is yours. Do you have any updates, Pamela or Tom or Barbara?
Yeah, an update I'll offer from Harrisburg in that in April, the full Senate is considering an EV bill that would require electric distribution companies to, in major metropolitan areas, to develop EV charging station plans, infrastructure plans. So that's already out of committee in the Senate and going to the full Senate this month.
So in our case, it would charge PPL to submit.
Correct.
Wow.
Correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let us know if you need any help. No, that's cool. Very interesting. And I'll add, PPL has already agreed to be on the decarbonization team. I don't know if it may be you, Barbara, or Jim, but they've already signed up for that group. So great to have you. Thank you very much.
Certainly.
I think it's a perfect placement for you all in the group. So and Tom, I would love. I think your expertise would fit almost in any group. I kind of feel like it's your own priority, you know, whether making buses EV or energy efficiency, or you know, I think your expertise would fit. But I'll if you can be part of one of those teams, I think it'd be terrific, and be great to have you on one of those, and you can maybe let me know what you think the best fit for you know, Carlisle area school district's objectives would be. So we'll make sure you're placed in that group.
Okay. Yeah, I would just give you a little update. Working around Arbor Day, the science, Sam Moyer, the head of our science department, she's been working real hard with Holly Smith from the Penn State Extension We're going to have about 4 acres of pollinator gardens going in on main campus, and we're going to be installing another 200 or 300 trees. And the students are going to be involved in all that and actually doing the installation of all that. So that's pretty good stuff.
That's great. Yeah. When does that commence?
Right around Arbor Day.
Oh,
It's-
you said Arbor Day. Okay.
Yeah, we're doing about of course, with those split sessions and all that kind of thing, it's going to be stretched out over about 2 weeks, so all the kids can be involved.
Great. Very good. Well, thank you for those updates, Barbara, Tom, Tamala. And unless there's any last minute items, if not, meeting's adjourned. Have a good night, everyone.